Oh, there we go.
Great.
Can you hear us, Teresa?
Yes, I do. Loud and clear, John.
Okay, thank you so much. Apologies, folks. I was at Officer Lay's funeral in Castro Valley, and they triple parked us in because that's how many people were there. So a little bit of delay getting out. But are you ready on your end to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 1:23 p.m. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Financial, Administrative, and Procurement Subcommittee of Ava Community Energy. Today is Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. We're located here at Ava Community Energy's headquarters at 1999 Harrison Avenue, Suite 2300. And there are remote locations in Fremont and Tracy provided for on the agenda, as well as via Zoom. And a member of the public wishing to give comment during this meeting may do so either using the raise hand feature on Zoom or using the *9 feature using if you're dialing by telephone. At this time, I would like to ask if Adrian would please take the roll call.
Great, thank you. Member Anderson. Member Anderson. Member Bedoya.
Present.
Member Gonzalez. Vice Chair Cox.
Present.
Chair Bowders.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum having been established. Item 2 is the public comment. Any member of the public wishes to give comment for an item not on the agenda in today's meeting will have 2 minutes to give comment. Do we have any person wishing to give comment? Actually, I'm going to pause before I move on to item 2. I'm going to ask that the minutes reflect that at the start of item 2, Member Gonzalez is present here in the chambers for the meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to give public comment for a non-agenda matter?
Yes, we have 3 hands raised.
Okay, please recognize the first speaker for 2 minutes.
Yes. Tim Frank. Recognized for 2 minutes. Hold on 1 second.
Good afternoon to all our speakers, and thank you for your patience and accommodation with today's events.
Tim
Perfect.
Frank, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Outstanding. Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate your attention to this issue. I'm Tim Frank, and I'm representing the building trades of Alameda County, and also I'm a member of the EJ and the Workforce and EJ Alliance, that is a collection of environmental justice and labor groups that have been seeking this a common package of policies for the CCAs in the Bay Area. And I want to thank the committee for initiating the conversation within AVA around embracing these common policies. And finally, I'd just like to say that it has been an absolute pleasure to work with both Nick and Howard. The staff was great to work with. I think we've come to a resolution that our alliance is extremely happy with, and I think that the staff is happy with it too, which is exactly what we want. So we are expecting this to move directly to the board per the instructions of Member Bowders at the last meeting, that if this issue were resolved to our pleasure, that it would go to the board, and we're pleased to say that it is ready to do so. So thank you very much, everybody that's been involved.
Thank you for your comment. I'll recognize the next speaker for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Leslie Austin, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Good afternoon, Chair Bowders and members of the FAP board. Leslie Austin, Director of Let's Green California. I too am here as a member of the CCA Workforce and Environmental Justice Standards Alliance of over 40 dedicated climate, labor, and environmental justice organizations across the Central Coast and Northern California. As we mentioned at the FAP meeting last month, our alliance, I guess maybe it was in November, our alliance has been actively engaged for the last couple of years in collaborating with CCAs across the Central Coast and Northern California to establish these robust labor and environmental justice standards. I just want to say we have absolutely nothing but sincere appreciation and gratitude for the leadership that Nick Chassett and Howard Chang have exhibited in advancing what we believe are exceptional workforce and environmental justice standards and policy at Ava Community Energy. We think this policy is the best in the state, and we're really excited for staff to present it to the policy board next week. I just want to say to you, Nick and Howard, thank you for your collaborative dialogue throughout this process. And I also want to thank you, Chair Bowders, and members of the FAP committee for setting us on a really effective path. So just to wrap it up, I want you all to know that we're deeply thankful to the entire AVA team, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker.
Eric Graham, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is Eric Vium. I'm coordinator for the CCA Workforce and Environmental Justice Alliance. I'll keep my comments brief because the prior commenters said everything I wanted to say, except for me to reiterate my appreciation and gratitude to CEO Nick Chassett and Howard Chang. I would say that the collaborative process that we went through for this serves as a model for collaboration and stakeholder engagement, and it's deeply appreciated. And I just want to reiterate, this is a leadership policy in the state, and looking forward to this coming before your board next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, public comment is now closed. We'll turn to item 3, approval of the minutes of November 8th, 2023. Members, are there any comments, questions, or corrections that you wish to make to the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, is there public comment on the minutes?
There are no hands raised at this time.
I do have,
Okay, hand is up. I recognize Vice Chair Cox.
thank you. I wanted to also, even though I was not at the meeting on November the 8th, I did send in a written comments to the FACT committee regarding in support of the agenda item number 4 as well, and would like to have that duly noted as part of the meeting.
Yes. It is posted on the website under public comment for that meeting. But I can go ahead, I can add that to minutes.
So Director Cox, we treated it as a comment, and so it was included actually in the full packet that was presented. If you'd like that, are you asking to have that you made comment reflected in the minutes? Is that your request?
I would like to have it reflected, the comments, and also to submit the email to be part of that packet as well.
Okay, are there any further amendments or corrections to the minutes? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the recommended amendments made by Member Cox. Second. Seconded by Gonzalez. Bowder's motion. Second, Gonzalez, please call the roll.
Thank you. Member Anderson. Member Bedoya.
Yes.
Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cox.
Yes.
Chair Bowders.
Aye, it's approved. Thank you. We'll move to item 4, which is the budget surplus item. So the discussion on how to allocate the projected budget surplus from the current fiscal year. We have a informational item only today. Mr. Chassett.
Yes, Adrian, can you pull up the slides, please? Great. So last June, when the approvals were given for this current fiscal year, direction was provided to staff to come back mid-year to provide an update, specifically to provide feedback and seek feedback and provide information on projected surplus and uses of the surplus. The previous year's waterfall allocated the surplus first to working capital, next to reserves, and then split the remaining dollars to 50% to buying more renewable energy, long-term renewable energy, and 50% towards a customer bill credit. The direction from the board for this year was retain a focus on allocating funds to working capital and the reserves, and then revisit the waterfall thereafter to explore kind of what various options could look like. So with that in mind, first I want to share kind of the budget update. So since we set the budget, the major change has been PG&E's rates have risen considerably. Their generation rates, as well as their transmission and distribution rates. I think you may actually be hearing a lot about the rate increases that have come, but those are mostly on the transmission and distribution charges, which are not relevant here. Their generation rates have also changed though, but to increase to a lesser degree. That change, plus some softening in the cost of energy. So some of our projections that we made last summer around the cost of energy, energy prices have not come in as high. So you bring those two factors, PG&E have higher rates, which means we have higher revenues because we index to PG&E, and some lower energy costs have resulted in an increase in our projected net revenue. So we had projected just under $180 million of net revenue for the fiscal year. As things currently stand, our projection is a little over 260 million in net revenue, which is an $80 million increase in net revenues that would be put through our waterfall. To note, we won't actually know what the final numbers are though until October 2024, when our financial year audit is complete. And while this is a much firmer number than the number we presented in the budget, because obviously we've 7 of our 12 months have progressed, this is quite subject to change as well. Mostly the changes here though mostly would be a result of energy pricing dynamics. We sort of know what the PG&E rates are going to be, thus what our rates are, and we could end up better or worse based on energy market prices moving either up or down and how that affects us. So with that all said, we wanted to lay out sort of 3 potential options. This is not the totality of the options, but these are sort of 3 options that we felt would be relevant for discussion today. And based on feedback, potentially these would be the 3, or potentially others could be raised at the board as well. So they are retain the current approach. So 50% renewables, 50% on-bill credit. Another option would be remove the on-bill credit, fully allocate to renewables. Another option would be take some portion of the net funds and put them towards incentives for rooftop solar. So next slide, please. So when we think about retaining the on-bill credits, I think one of the things that's important context to think about is the current PG&E rate filing, the rates that went into effect January 1st, 2024, will increase the average residential customer's bill by $70 over the course of the next calendar year. So we're seeing rising costs for customers from just related to PG&E, related to sort of our billing structure, where we set our rates at a 5% discount to what PG&E charges. Under the current net income or net revenue projections, or the budgeted net revenue projections, if we maintained our 50-50 split for on-bill credits, you would expect just under a $10 bill credit to be issued to customers next winter. This year, we just issued around a $7 bill credit to the average customer, which represents roughly, if that had been amortized over 12 months, that's equal to just over 1% incremental discount. So if we have a 5% and we'd amortize that $7 over 12 months, our effective value proposition would be 6%. So this $10 bill credit equates to roughly another 1.5% discount. Now, if we take the updated revenue projections, the customer bill credit, and you apply the 50-50 allocation, the customer bill credit is projected to be $36.53. As we think about the bill increase, that bill credit would serve to offset 50% of the annual increase in the generation costs that customers are seeing as a result of the higher PG&E rates. So if we keep the current allocation, 50% renewables, 50% towards customer bill credits, our projection is customers would receive a $36 bill credit at the end of 2024, thereabouts. That $36 represents half of the underlying increase in their generation costs that have come about as a result of PG&E's rate increases. Notable conditions, it is a one-time payout in the November-December timeframe. And it directly affects rates. And what also note is this would also be in addition to the $50 bill credit that we're planning to continue to give to our Care/Fairer customers. So this year, all of our Care/Fairer customers received a $7 bill credit that everyone got, and then incrementally they got an additional $50. So for a Care customer could expect to get more like an $86 bill credit which then more than offsets the PG&E rate increase. I don't think though that the direction from the board mid-year was not to call into question whether or not we would continue to do the care fair. So that's not necessarily on the table here. So that's sort of what retaining the on-bill credits would look like. Next slide, please, Adrian. And these are some charts that sort of show
One comment on the left chart is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 should state 2019 through 2024. So that's all supplemental.
So this just sort of shows how, how the rates have changed over time from 2019 through now. And as you provide bill credits, obviously, like it reduces the customer's overall bill quite considerably on a percentage basis relative to the rates of change for PG&E. Any questions?
On this slide or in general?
Just in general about, or I can keep going.
You go, Director Gonzalez.
Just big picture, $70 average bill increase for generation. What's happening on the distribution transmission side? Is that gonna overweigh that effect?
Absolutely. I think the distribution charge, I think the average customer bill and the total bill, I believe, is $34 a month. So that's around, call it $400. So if it's a $400 expected annual increase, $70, 80% of the bill increases on the transmission distribution charge. And that's not our charge. That's not covered here at all, but that's
a larger portion, and it is also seeing it as
A big
material
and it's
increase.
seeing a bigger percentage increase than the generation rates.
So you can amplify that when you look at this.
Let's say the average increase will be $400 per year.
The average residential customer will see an average increase of around $400 a year on their total bill.
On their total bill, okay. Of which 70 will be gen.
70, no, of which 70 will be the AVA charge, and $330 will be the PG&E distribution and transmission charge. Okay, great. Next slide, please.
I had a question.
Yes.
I got you. Go ahead. Hold on, Director Cox. Director Cox, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask on the on-bill credit, is there any restrictions that the residents have to be a 1-year customer of AVA? Or are they like go in at the time that they join in as an AVA customer and get prorated with this on-bill credit?
It doesn't get prorated. We actually were thinking quite a bit about this question, and I think we felt that the number of customers who are sort of in this move in, move out. It's on an absolute basis, it's a small, because this is residential customers. It's a small number of total customers of the 650,000 accounts, and it introduced some operational risks if you start to try to sort of adjust it. And additionally, many customers who are moving in very likely are moving from somewhere else in our service area. And it's hard for us to know. So if I lived in Fremont and I moved to San Leandro, I'm considered a new move-in, but I was still an AVA community energy customer. So I still should be eligible for the bill credit because I've been an AVA customer throughout that process, throughout that year. I just moved within the service area. And so that's where we have some visibility issues in our ability to track move-ins, move-outs. And so we determined that if you are a customer at the time of the bill credit, you get the bill credit. And it also works that if somebody
Customer, okay.
Somebody
Is that-
moved out of the service area, they'd been a customer throughout the year, and they moved from Fremont to San Jose, well, they lose out on it. And so,
I see.
so it sort
Okay.
of works for us and against us.
It's the time of when the account is held that you are a residential
That's right.
account.
That's
Okay,
right.
got it. Thank you for explaining that.
Yep, that's right. Next slide, please, Adrian. So another option could be to fully allocate to buying more long-term renewals. So in our last fiscal year, we have allocated $10.5 million to support the procurement of marginal renewable energy capacity. So the idea here is when we go through our request for offers and we're evaluating projects, there are projects that we choose not to contract with because we have, they've been deemed to be economically infeasible or not economically aligned with kind of our efforts to manage costs and clean energy acquisition. And so this is $10.5 million that we have to say, okay, we're willing to spend an additional $10.5 million of the 10 or 15-year life of this particular project. And so the idea is that it makes projects that were not economic now economic. So basically, it uses sort of goes to defray those costs. If no change was made, so if we applied sort of the approach from last year, a 50-50 allocation, this year this balance would increase to $60.9 million, or roughly see a $50 million allocation. No, that's not right.
This is really talking about the just the on-bill credit portion of 60 million.
I think I was looking at these numbers. So let's just actually, because the point simply is there would be a significant increase. I think it is that is right. It would be a roughly $60 million increase if we were to allocate all of it to renewables. You're going to see another $60 or so million.
Yeah, the delta is 50.
Yeah,
That's right.
okay. So the point being, it's a significant increase in the budget we have to buy marginal renewables. That's an option. It's hard to sort of know exactly how many megawatt hours of new renewables that this would go to support, because there's quite a wild skew in what projects are costing these days. But it's meaningful. It is once you're starting to talk about hundreds of millions of dollars, it is probably a medium-sized solar or wind project that we might not otherwise procure, that we might now procure with this. So that would be that's what that would look like. And then next slide. And then the third, and this probably speaks more to sort of the community discussion at the meeting in June, and some of the community discussion that we've consistently heard over the last months, is about taking some or all of this this residual net revenue and applying it to incentives for solar. So here we're talking about as incentives for the net billing tariff, mostly because from an operational perspective, we are moving into a new rooftop solar paradigm, one that is quite disadvantageous for the rooftop solar industry or for consumers. And so as we think about allocating these funds to support rooftop solar, instead of creating any sort of a standalone incentive that would just apply to, say, a community resilience hub, what we're sort of saying is, first and foremost, we are intending to bring to the board, in the next number of months, a framework to provide incentives for people to install solar and storage on their home. That incentive is meant to help bridge the gap between net metering 2 and net metering 3. And so what staff would likely propose here is to take some or all of those funds that are, so some or all of the $81 million, and set those up as within this incentive framework, but incentives that could be allocated to every potential customer or allocated to specific types of customers. So we might say every customer who wants to install solar is eligible for a $2,000, just example. There's every solar and storage system that is installed is eligible for a $2,000 incentive from AVA, and that's covered out of our operating budget. But we want to set this $81 million aside so that low-income customers or projects that sort of meet a set of criteria for what constitutes a community resilience hub are eligible for an additional $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000. And so it's a pool of funds to pay for higher levels of incentives for certain kinds of solar and storage projects, or it could be set aside this goes to just provide a higher incentive for all solar and storage projects. And I think that's that would be something that the specifics there was something we would want to work out. If the direction is given to us to allocate some portion of the net revenues to this. So yes, as I said, we're gathering feedback from the solar industry, and we'll be back in March with more specifics about what the more general sort of incentive framework for solar and storage will be. And if the board gives us direction to some or all of these funds to sort of go on top of that, then that would be part of that consideration. If the direction is not to do that, then these dollars will not be considered as part of that framework. So those are sort of the three major sort of, now it's not the totality, certainly funds are fungible, right? You could do a third, a third, a third. You could say, we're going to take money and we're going to do something totally different that's not here. But the general direction that we felt we heard was focused on solar and storage. And so that's why we've kind of laid that out as the third option. But could you do incentives for other electrification measures? Of course. I think our main feedback there would be, we generally feel like it's good to allocate these dollars into pathways that already exist, as opposed to going out and creating a wholly new initiative that we don't yet have the infrastructure to support. And that is the
End of the
that is the end
presentation.
of the presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. Now is the time for public comment. A member of the public wishing to give comment on agenda item 4 will receive 2 minutes of time for comment. Adrian, do we have anybody who wishes to give comment on this item?
Yes, we do.
How many hands do I have?
One.
Okay, please recognize our speaker for 2 minutes.
Okay, Local Clean Energy Alliance, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. This is Jessica with East Bay Clean Power Alliance and Local Clean Energy Alliance. Well, first of all, I want to name that we still have some questions about what these bill credits look like for municipal and commercial accounts, which has never been divulged. So that's a transparency issue. And certainly we want to know what that looks like in comparison to the $7 that were given as a one-time credit to residential customers. And just to name it, another community choice program has given a $300 bill credit to their Care and Farah customers. So just that for context. But as we said before, and we will say again, that this money is better spent in community benefits that will be felt in the long term and create savings in the long term, as well as building more energy resilience and other community benefits, right? Like the creation of clean energy jobs, the reduction of pollution at a local level. All of this is in the local development business plan. And so you mentioned, I heard Nick mention the resilience hubs. That is something we've been asking for. The microgrids that are needed during weather crisis or whatever crisis we'll be facing. And we're seeing a lot of that happening now. But also resilience hubs funding for other things that are related to weathering storms. And so I just want to uplift that the money is better spent investing back into the energy resilience in our communities and the local development. And we are very excited and poised to help in terms of working with environmental justice communities. Thank you. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, public comment is now closed and we'll turn to members for discussion. Are there any members who wish to ask questions or discuss? This is an information item only. I do have a question just about process, which is, so what is the staff's proposed timeline for bringing this back for a recommendation from the committee to the board?
We would bring this to the board at our next meeting in January.
Oh, so this will come next week without a recommendation from the committee?
Well, if there's no recommendation from the committee, so if there's a recommendation from the committee, we'll
Well,
make.
it's an information. That's why I was curious. It didn't seem like you were seeking our input. That's why. It wasn't listed as an action item for recommendation. It was listed as information. So
Because I think the intent was to seek a
Okay,
recommendation.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
the
fine.
sense is to seek, yes. I'm
Gui-
sorry.
seek guidance, because
Seek gui-
yeah,
yes,
usually,
Yes,
okay, that's
I
fine.
don't- We weren't necessarily seeking a formal vote, therefore. that we
That's
declined
fine.
that.
Okay, understood. All right, so we'll just ask members, we'll seek consensus or feedback, and then staff can capture that appropriately for the presentation at the board. Directors Bedoya or Cox, do you have any comments or questions or preferences based on what you've heard?
Yes, I would like to weigh in. This is Director Cox.
Okay, go ahead.
And I would like to see that in the surplus budget, that some of the money does go for the on-bill credits. I think this would be a benefit for our community, since there are people going through hardship that have lost their jobs. And we need to help them in this time of need with this extra money. And so I do like that idea. I also would say maybe dividing it into 3 ways to see how we can have the greatest impact in meeting some of the other mission of AVA and doing the renewables. And then also allowing people that do want to invest in solars and the storage, paired with the storage, that they could be able to have an opportunity on that as well. So kind of dividing the money into 3 ways.
Okay, thank you, Member Bedoya. Do you have feedback on this? Are you there? Member Gonzalez?
So 2 thoughts. I like the idea of supporting distributed generation, so local installation, local battery. Finding a way to just distribute the risk in our system. I do like the idea of bill credits. I was intrigued by the idea of a larger rebate payment to the customers on care. Certainly that sounds intriguing to me, because in the end, what we're trying to do is help those that are the neediest. And I'm assuming that that's already been filtered, assessed, tested by somebody else. So we're writing the benefit of their needs assessment. I am not inclined to support the purchase of materially out of market renewables, because I think that the market has been volatile, and that's just subsidizing, I'll call it bad behavior or advantageism of some people who think that they can squeeze an extra penny out of the market. We've seen that in the pricing of generation has been somewhat volatile. So I think not chasing, but just waiting 6 months, a year, 2 years for markets to adjust is a wiser use of that money. So i.e. not investing there, looking at bill credits, looking at distributed generation. And other projects, if we want to help support electrification in certain high pollution neighborhoods, as opposed to just generalized, here, anybody who wants to buy an induction stovetop, really focus that where it's going to have air quality impacts. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I have a question. So the resilience hubs that were mentioned by the public commenter, does staff have thought on that?
Yeah, I think that the main thought would be, if we wanted to support, we want to allocate dollars to resilience hubs, we would do it as an adder in the already planned incentives that we're planning to design. And then we would seek to develop eligibility criteria for what constitutes a resilience hub. So that might be specific NAICS NAICS codes. So, all right, could be building it has a NICS code for a community center or a church, or, you know, we sort of define like, hey, these are the eligibility criteria we want to use. Any project, any location that meets those eligibility criteria can apply or go through our process, and then they are eligible for a higher incentive level that is funded from this pool of money that is funded here. So that would go to support, yeah, the resilience hubs, if that's what the direction is, that we want to focus just on resilience hubs, or it could be resilience hubs and other eligible criteria.
Okay, so my feedback is I support a combination of investing in at least getting some, like trying to establish a resilience hub. We have like $14 million, $16 million is what we thought. I know we don't know until the actual close period, like the amount of money we have here to invest.
In totality, you're saying what is the forecasted budget?
Yeah.
Surplus? It is
80 million.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that much
No,
higher?
it's much larger,
It
yeah.
was 80 million total, and I think the number had previously been something like 20 million.
Okay, wait, Jason
It
has
was
some.
previously 30, now it's
30.
110.
Oh, yes, okay. So
Yeah.
80 more,
If
yeah.
if we were to stick with renewables and on-bill credits, it would be 55 towards each. And I think we're discussing the 55 for on-bill credits.
So
Primarily, but
if
not to
we-
say we can't
if
change
we were to
that
take
aspect.
I'll use member Cox as example. So if it's 110, that would be roughly 35 million for on-bill credits, 35 million for renewables, 35 million for solar and storage. If we were to take member Gonzalez's recommendation, if you take that sort of general 30, 30, 30, it would be 35 million for higher care customer bill credits, 35 million for all bill credits for all customers, and 35 million for incremental incentives for solar and storage, perhaps focused on resilience hubs, like resilience hubs or electrification in high pollution neighborhoods.
Can you pull up this slide deck and put it on slide 2, just so that.
And this, just remind me, this is, final calculation of this won't happen until September?
That's right. When the audit gets
October is when the
completed.
like in June, July, we have we'll have our unaudited financials.
Mm-hmm.
Or so June, July, we'll say pretty darn close.
Okay.
But you don't actually, until you close the books on the year and you actually get through the audit, you don't actually know the final numbers. And so in October, when the audit is brought forward to the board, that is when, you know, we have a methodology. Let's just say it's a 30, 30, 33, 33, 33. At that point in time in October, we said we have the direction, and now the audit is completed, and it's $100 million. So it's 33 million for each category. And at that point, we have a very clear sense. So, all right, 33 million for care customers, divide that,
Got it.
every care customer is going to get something, et cetera.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my recommendation is that I agree with Director Gonzalez about I'm not interested in like out of jurisdiction allocation for renewables and like just being in the market. I don't agree with that. I think I want to support a combination of bill credits. Just thinking, I mean, Director Cox mentioned people's economic realities over the past year, and although this is financially perhaps on delay, I'm interested in that. There was a question about corporate property credits. Like, is there a formula that differentiates residential from commercial properties?
Yeah, so the formula differential is really, we didn't calculate every residential customer did not get their own calculation, because when we did you look at the distributions of significant portion that were within, between $6.50 and $8. But then, there's a very small differential. We felt that there was a risk calculation error. So we took an average for the residential customers. But when we're talking about commercial customers, it's considerably fewer accounts. So we just did, every customer got a calculation. So we determined we had a pool of funds, I believe it was $10 million. And we divided that $10 million by the total consumption, 7 million megawatt hours. And that gave us every megawatt hour or kilowatt hour consumption got a certain level of bill credit. We just did the simple arithmetic. And so commercial customers got the actual, residential customers got an average.
Two questions. One, giving people their actual based on consumption, are we, this is gonna sound like a perverse question maybe, but like, we're not incentivizing them to consume more, are we?
I don't think so, because
The way the
it's
math
it's
is
an
gonna work?
offset to already a higher.
So it's just a sub
Energy
portion.
cost,
We're
so
not,
it's
there's
just
not a
a-
financial reason. There's not gonna be a tax reason or other reason why somebody's gonna try to get locked into a higher, I mean, it seems weird. It's like, I'm gonna turn the lights on.
Because
tonight
they're
for
still
that.
gonna, their costs are still gonna exceed.
Exceed
what
that.
the
Yes,
credit
so
is,
if
so
if
there's
this
not-
number was a big enough number, you could argue, hey, I have an incentive to use more energy because I have this big bill credit, but these are still like. The
There's still, like,
underlying
bigger
cost
ones.
of more energy, of wasting
Yeah.
energy is so much greater than the benefit you're getting, we do not think that it's gonna.
It's not gonna be a windfall that actually somehow reduces their energy costs, so they're still gonna pay more. Now,
Yeah.
maybe the offset would not encourage them to try to save as much, because.
No, but the other way to think about it is that the offset also, as you think about the counter side of that, is electrification. So this presents an incentive to electrify. You're like, you might be
Yeah,
going to a heat
you're
pump.
offsetting in, yeah, exactly. You're offsetting.
So
in
this
anyway.
is, you might say, great, all right, great, I'm gonna get this, I use more energy, but I'm gonna get an extra couple bucks at the end of the year, or $10 at the end of the year, because I switched from gas to electric, and this doesn't apply to gas.
I think the thing I'm thinking of now is just, so I don't have any problem with actual calculations for a smaller number of properties like you're doing. I think that's fine. I think on the average of all the residential properties though, you know, like essentially there are half of the people, if it's an average, half of the people, although the mean is not the same as the average, but let's just be mathematically even for the sake of this discussion, are getting slight benefit more than their consumption or compared to the other half, right? Is there any reason why we wouldn't statistically consider a number that's closer to the higher end of the average? So if you had the 6.5 to 8 ratio, right, as opposed to stopping at 725, could we say that we're gonna go halfway between the average and the higher end, so that we're just capturing more people in a benefit, giving them a higher benefit back? Just thinking of a way to, because everybody else is getting an actual, so half of our residential customers are not actually getting their actual, right? Because they're getting the average. So I know that the dollar amount is far smaller, right, in the end, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to easily do that and just like peg an artificial space between the average and the upper end of the bar, because I don't want to pick some outlier at the the top end of the bar that's not really realistic. But is there any calculation issue with that?
No, I mean, I don't think we can kind of calculate it however we want. I think my only comment there is we can do it. I think we'd want some pretty explicit direction as to sort of how you'd like us to do it. And I don't have the specifics, but I do think when we looked at the distributions,
It
It
made
was-
me feel it was material.
it really wasn't material. You had the outliers typically actually were on the really high consumption as opposed to the low consumption. And that's because you have a very small number of customers. There's a 1% of customers who use an extremely high amount of energy
I believe it.
for sort of unclear reasons to
Yeah,
us.
they have a grow house in their basement. Right now.
Yes, exactly right. Or
I've been to the suburbs. I know what that looks like.
so but it truly was, the vast majority are within 50 cents to $1 on either side. But you could do a mean instead of you could do a median mean. Like I think what we could do is this: in the absence of a specific, why don't we come back before we make the next issue, before we make a final decision and say, hey, we've looked at, we looked at average, this is what average would be, this is what say mean would be, or median, and if one, these should be like mathematically relevant approaches to sort of looking at it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so part of what I'm struggling is that there's a pot of money. And are we saying give more to residential customers? Because to the extent that we move, X times Y, if we change Y and we move it to the left, that means that the total amount of money grows.
Sure.
So I just want to be clear, are
That's
we
what- yeah.
saying
That's what I am saying.
give more to residential customers?
Yes, which would just mean that the total Z at the end of your equation would just be a bigger Z than it is now.
Which is fine. So right now, what is that split in terms of the amount of money that's
Proportionately to each other?
Yeah, in
the way
proportion.
the way we did it was by customer class. So we took I believe we actually did a calculation of we took every residential megawatt hour,
Load per rata.
right? So let's say 4 million megawatt hours of 4 million and change megawatt hours. we know what the discount per megawatt hour is. We multiplied that. That created a pool of money. That created like a $5 million pool. 5 million and change was our residential pool. The way we chose to allocate it amongst that pool was a single number based on average. And then we did, you know, there's a commercial pool.
So what was that amount?
And that was based on, the way we calculated the two pools was the same. It was just how much total consumption in the pool multiplied by the savings rate, which is sort of a fraction of a cent. That creates a budget for your commercial incentive or your commercial credit and your residential credit. For commercial customers, we then allocated the credits on an actual basis. For residential, we said, we're gonna calculate a single number. We're gonna divide that pool by the number of accounts, and that gets you a number.
I think what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing though is, so I think we understand the formula you're using. I think the question is, like, when you put the residential customers next to the commercial customers, if 5 million was what you had, you know, after you did these formulas and you had to work with, what was the total dollar amount of the commercial customers? Like, I mean, like, is it five? Like, are we looking at residential is 5% of what you spent, and you spent 95 million on commercial customers? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what is
It's
the?
about 50-50.
Okay, that's what I
I
was.
think
trying
it's
to understand.
45% residential and
We're talking about what is
65%,
basically the share.
55%.
Yeah, it's
Load that is residential.
It's
versus-
pure,
Right, so-
and I actually
I'm
think,
just trying to get that.
I
ratio
don't think
down.
I was being, I don't think that I was answering your question, because now as I think about it a little more. The way we did the calculation was purely because the mean median doesn't actually matter there. We just took the customer class, the total consumption of the classes, the residential customers and commercial customers, and you said the simple arithmetic. You have a pool of funds, and then how we allocated, you know, now I think what you could in theory do for residential is you could say, we're gonna break it into quartiles, and you say, you know, you do averages within the quartile. So very low users are gonna get a little bit less, and very high users will get a little bit more, but the total pool remains the same. Now you could decide we want to take money from the commercial pool and put it in the residential pool, and that'll increase it, but we don't have a specific methodology actually in mind for how we would do that today.
We also don't have a pool of money that we've decided on.
Yeah, that's right.
If I can just clarify, the methodology is the number of mils or pennies per kilowatt hour. That decrement, that rebate, I don't know what we're calling it exactly, that give back, that's the same for every account.
For every megawatt hour,
Yes.
irrespective of class, it's the same.
Therefore, if you consume a lot, commercial customers, industrial customers,
Yeah.
you're going to get a bigger number because it's whatever 0.0 something times a big
Yep.
number.
It's a constant
Yeah.
fixed factor. It's a constant factor.
Load-based pro rata share.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so I think given the current method, it would only be if that was a differential rate for licks versus residentials.
Right.
And that would have to be a conscious decision that we promote.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, so my preference would be some of I don't have a dollar like or a percentage division, but I think the on-bill credit and I think the resilience hubs, some combination of those are like getting that started is the way to go.
Okay.
That's just one person. Can you take the screen down so I can see everybody? So I just want to go back to folks. It sounds like I'm hearing unanimity around some level of on-bill credits. So we have that agreement. Member Bedoya, are you back? No. Okay. So further discussion around a recommendation from the members who are here about the other options. So Director Cox, you had expressed interest in all three of these categories. Is that still, Director Gonzalez and I weren't as interested in some of the out of state kind of like developing new renewable stuff.
Market subsidy.
Yeah, thank you.
I think based on what we're going to vote on next week with the local work and workforce development and opportunities to keep projects in our jurisdiction, I think that would be wise so that we can have a greater impact and benefit to the community. So I would probably adjust my comments as listening to the discussion, because I guess I missed that part of the presentation, and thank you to my colleagues for pointing that out. I think my first position would always be on bill credits to the residents and those that are current customer account holders, and then probably modifying my other two instead of doing the three, maybe keeping it with two and splitting it with the renewable projects as long as it's within the jurisdiction. And of course, the bill credits that I would probably still foremost would want to help as a community loyalty and trust and continue to help our community in this time of need. So I would adjust that from what I said earlier, just going down from three down to the two. But as long as it's in the jurisdiction of where we're operating for AVA right now, then that would be the key part. And assuming then there's a true up in October is what I'm hearing as well. That's the true up.
That's when the total dollar figure will be audited and determined. So we don't know how much we have exactly until then. We're
Okay,
just setting a policy. We're giving guidance to staff as to how we're going to do it so they can take whatever preparation steps they might need to take to be ready for that when that dollar amount comes alive.
okay. I hope my comments were helpful. So, as we have a little bit more dialogue, we could try to see if there's alignment here.
Mr. Chaz.
Oh, so okay, so what I'm hearing then is preference for some split between the on-bill credit and incentives for local solar and storage projects as discussed. I think that the only additional sort of clarifying question in terms, because I feel like there's fairly strong sort of consensus amongst the three of you, is would you like to see any sort of specific, as Member Gonzalez mentioned, a specific sub allocation to care for our customers? So you could do as for instance, 20% as a higher incentive for your care for our customers. So if you allocated 20% of 110 million, that is $22 million. $22 million is equal to a roughly $200 bill credit for care for our customers. And then you'd have a equal 40% allocation for on-bill credits. That's a roughly $30 bill credit for all customers. And then an additional 40% or roughly $40 or so million for incentives for solar and storage resilience hub type of projects.
I'm supportive of that proposal, actually. I'm fine with that. I support the recommendation to prioritize and give extra funding to care customers. I just think to me, it's a housing security issue. Is people lose their homes all the time, and we often think people are homeless just because of mental health and addiction. As a 4 million house person, you lose your home because you don't have money. So I just really strongly support that recommendation. And utilities is a really creeping way in which people become financially insolvent quickly. So I will endorse Director Gonzalez's recommendation, and I'm okay making the dollar or the percentage distribution, leaving it a little open for board discussion. But I think the framework you provided makes sense.
And that's just a framework. It's not a specific number. It's just I think that might be how I present it, not because that's a staff recommendation, but it allows us to sort of give you a concrete sense of this is what the numbers would be under this breakdown.
Yeah, like just bring two examples is what I would say, so they can see what it looks like when you chart to move the numbers. They can see how that changes. Director Cox, are you okay with the recommendation? So we're going to prioritize on-bill credits, and we're going to have within it an incentive for additional money for care, right? So it'll still be an on-bill credit, but the care customers will have a higher rebate that's included within the total dollar amount that will be prepared. And then we'll agree to reserve about 40% of the total pot of money. Could be 100 to 110 million so 40% of that we'll put aside for local renewables and resilience hubs. Does that work? So 60% is for the credit.
That will work.
Renewables we're talking about is behind the meter distributed generation, or we're talking about larger scale renewables?
I think we're focused, I think the staff recommendation would be behind the rooftop. And that's just because that's very clear what we're going for. That the resilience hubs will all fall within that framework.
That's fine. Just present that clearly
That's
to
what
the board.
That's what we'll clarify.
Okay, so there's no motion, but the direction that this committee is given is that we're gonna recommend to the board to consider as a starting point for conversation, 60% of total funds going to on-bill credits to be broken down in a manner that provides both a standard on-bill credit for all customers plus a additional deeper benefit for the care customers, and that the balance of the funds will be for behind the rooftop, or however Nick wants to call that in the presentation, solar investments, and resilience hubs that are local in nature to Alameda County and the service area outside it. Does everyone agree with that?
That works.
Okay, we have unanimous agreement by the members present, so that will be the direction to staff, and that will conclude agenda item 4. We'll move to item 5, which is the overview of long-term offtake agreements for the January board approval.
If I may.
You may.
So before we proceed, this will be the presentation that I heard on Monday, procurement.
Yes,
Committee?
yeah, you heard this in a ad hoc committee, correct?
Ad hoc
So this is
committee,
to
okay.
review this.
Okay,
Just so that the chair is aware, I may leave, I will likely leave and at the 2:30 mark to take a phone call.
understood.
But I have heard this presentation.
Is this a long presentation?
It
I
can
have
be,
2 new slides, Member Gonzalez. There's 2 new slides.
2 new slides, let's hit them first.
it's not a short presentation.
It's-
Obviously, we can try to move expeditiously, but
Yeah,
there's quite.
I don't manage staff, but I do prefer my presentations to be always under 10 minutes because people don't pay attention after that, and so you're not really presenting, in my opinion. So, Marie, I know you always get put at the end of my agendas. What is that about? I'm gonna write a memo, Marie, because you should go to the front of an agenda once in a while. But take it from here.
Okay. All right, bear with me. I'm going to move over to the screen share.
You need to-
The good news is there are some components that of this presentation I can skip over. And let me just be clear from the beginning. The intention of this presentation is twofold. Number one, it is to give you a preview of contracts I will be bringing to the board next week and asking the board's authority to enter into long-term offtake agreements. But uniquely, there are 4 contracts here that are a different contract structure than what we normally bring to the board. And that's why I think it warrants presentation to this committee, because it's just to have a little bit more familiarity with it. That's point number 1. The second intent is on one of these deals in particular, and I'll be very clear about which one it is. I would like to solicit some feedback from the committee on 2 different commercial structures that I could enter into if the committee and the board are in favor of the deal. Let me move into it. This slide deck probably looks familiar. It is the standard slide deck that the Power Resources team uses when we are presenting power purchase agreements and other forms of long-term offtake to the board for the board's approval. So just a reminder, we went out to market looking to enter into contract with new long-term offtake agreements for the purposes of meeting compliance obligations and hedging our demand through physical and financial supply agreements. Eligible products. Quick reminder, our evaluation rubric looks at quantitative and qualitative measures. On the quantitative side, we look at what is the value of the proposed projects as compared to the cost of them over their life. And then qualitatively, we ask ourselves, is this a local project? We prefer local projects. Is it in state? We require that any in-state project use union workforce, and of course, we prioritize the use of union workforce. We make sure that the developers are paying fair wages. We make sure that projects are mature in their development status and other points. I'll skip over this. We've been negotiating contracts from the RFO for quite a while now. We've already brought a few to the board, and you've seen this slide before. Now, here's where things start to get different. So I will be bringing one contract to the board that for a project that was offered to us through the 2023 long-term resource RFO. And I will be bringing four contracts that were offered to us bilaterally from developers. And the reason we had 3 different developers reach out to us and propose to do deals with us. The reason that they're trying to get deals done right now is because of the interconnection timeline and the interconnection process at the CAISO, the energy market who runs the energy market, and also they are the entity that manages transmission reliability for the state of California. So in a moment, I will show you the CAISO's interconnection timeline, but there is a key date coming up. On February 14th, developers of projects have to submit affidavits to the CAISO and make requests that the CAISO consider their projects to be granted the deliverability designation. You have to have deliverability in order for the resource to count in the resource adequacy program. And we know from countless presentations of mine that resource adequacy is how the state measures reliability. Are there going to be enough resources on the grid so that the grid will operate reliably on a forward-looking basis? Not all resources get the ability to count in the resource adequacy program. And you have to have this deliverability designation in order to count. If a developer signs an affidavit and submits it to the CAISO on February 14th of this year and says, please study my project, CAISO, and look, I have a signed contract with an off-taker, the CAISO is going to pay extra attention to that. The deals that have executed offtake agreements will be more considered. They sort of get extra points in the evaluation process. They are more likely to be granted deliverability. Whereas like just being on the short list in my RFO, that helps, but it's not going to be as valuable as having some form of a signed offtake agreement. And then the least valuable is, we have site control. This is an idea of a project, but we're not actually negotiating the contract with anyone yet. That's why developers are trying to get deals done right now, very, very quickly. This is an overview of the CAISO's interconnection timeline. And I could spend a whole hour just talking about this slide, but I heard your point about timing. So 2 things that I want to point out to you. Number one, look, starting on the far left, the CAISO evaluates projects for interconnection in clusters. CAISO is currently evaluating cluster 14. Next up will be cluster 15. They look at projects in sort of bundles based upon when projects go into the interconnection queue, the line for interconnection. This cluster started in 2021, and it will be wrapping up around the end of 2024. I mentioned the date of February 14th. It's right here in the middle, highlighted in yellow. This is when these deliverability affidavits have to be submitted to the CAISO. And if you look down on the bottom right, the last cluster's deliverability affidavit, those were due in December of 2021. So we're over 2 years out from the last time developers had the ability to try to get deliverability for projects. That is another reason that developers are kind of chomping at the bit, desperate to get deliverability for their projects. There's been a big delay in the interconnection process of projects. Getting deliverability is just one component of that interconnection process. So we are looking at these deals because by and large, they are projects that would come online farther out in time. and where we think that they could be valuable to us in the future. And I'll talk more about them in just a second. Okay, so projects proposed for execution, there are 5 of them. This is just an overview. Let's go into the individual project pages. First up, this is from the RFO. The developer, Long Road, we recently executed a contract with them through a previous RFO process, and we'd like to execute another contract with Long Road. Long Road is an experienced developer. They have 1 project with MCE, and as I just mentioned, they have signed 1 contract with AVA for a project that has not come online yet. This project that we would like to enter into contract with is called Zeta Energy Solar Plus Storage. It's a 75 megawatt solar facility and 75 megawatt storage, but we're breaking it in 2 pieces. So AVA will be off-taker on half of it, and San Jose will be off-taker on the other half of it. It'll be a 20-year contract. It's expected to come online in April of 2027. They have site control. They have a fully executed interconnection agreement. They have the deliverability designation because they started studying this project years and years ago. And they are committed to paying prevailing wages and using union labor. So this is kind of like the normal, nothing surprising here for this group. Now we're getting into the projects that were offered to us bilaterally. And I mentioned 3 developers offered us deals. We only are moving forward with 2 developers. 2 developers, 2 deals each under each developer. The first is a Spanish developer named Ignis. They are a privately owned developer and operator of a variety of different technologies of resources. They are led by 2 executives. One worked for Iberdrola, the Spanish utility and development company. It's actually now called Avangrid. And the other, so that person has a lot of development experience. The other executive leader has a lot of finance experience. He worked for Bank of America and a number of other large banks. They have currently developed over 1,100 megawatts of resources. They have a very extensive development portfolio in Spain and internationally, and about 2,400 megawatts of resources they're developing in the United States. It's a mix basically between California and Texas. Let's talk about the individual projects. One of them is a battery storage facility that will be built in Alameda County. So, our interest here is not surprising at all. What we seek to do with Ignis on this project is execute an RA-only contract. If, after we execute the contract, it's a 90 megawatt battery. After we execute the contract, they'll submit it to the CAISO. Hopefully they'll get the deliverability designation, meaning the battery can count in the RA program. And then they'll come back to us and we'll renegotiate and try to turn this into a full storage contract, what we call a storage toll, where we would get the RA value and the ability to operate it, to charge and discharge it in the energy market. That is our intention. We're not doing that at this time because you just can't negotiate a full toll in like 6 weeks, including over the holidays. They're too complicated. We need more time to work through this deal. And because the project is kind of trying to fit into the interconnection process and the deliverability process a little bit late. I think the project has actually changed hands amongst a few developers. And so Ignis is just now diving in and trying to develop this project. This project will pay prevailing wages. They will use union labor. They have not signed those agreements quite yet. The next project is the one that I'm looking for board input on specifically. I am very aware that this could be a controversial project. It is also developed by Ignis. It is a wind farm. The wind farm itself will be physically sited in Mexico, just across the border from San Diego. There will be a transmission line built connecting the wind farm directly into the United States and interconnecting to a substation in San Diego Gas and Electric Territory's service area. Let me actually go forward one slide. This is a very high level simplistic representation of what it will look like. The wind farm is the transmission line connecting the wind farm to the San Diego substation is 2 kilometers long, so less than 2 miles. They will use American union workforce to interconnect to the San Diego substation. They will use American union workforce to build the transmission line all the way up to the wind farm and to build the substation at the wind farm. But the development of the wind farm itself will be used, they will use Mexican workforce. They, it will be IBEW, so, union wages, prevailing wage, no problem on the American side. They can commit to paying local Mexican local prevailing wage, and they do have stringent health and safety standards. I have not gotten a copy of them yet, but they have verbally indicated that, they understand my concerns, and they are willing to show me what their health and safety standards are to mitigate the risk of accidents on the job site and provide protections for any employees should an accident occur. But it will not be entirely American workforce, and it will not be entirely union workforce, because the wind farm development itself will be in Mexico by Mexican workforce. Let me go back a slide now. So the question here is sort of a two-part question. Number one, let me just say, foundationally, the benefit we see of this project is there are not many wind farms being developed in California, or functionally, I guess it's right outside of California, but it is more of a Southern California wind pattern. There are not many wind assets being developed in or very close to California. And so by contracting with this resource, we would be able to secure a generation profile that is different from other wind projects in our portfolio. It is, it will count electrically as if it was within California, as if the wind farm was in California. So it will be a PCC1 REC. And then financially, it would be a good deal for our customers. This would be a valuable hedge, and the pricing is good, and the value of the project looks good over a 20-year life. Now, the option for the board is, if we could move forward and bring this to if the option for the committee, if we bring this to the board and seek board approval of this project next week, we could bring a full PPA and ask the board's authority to execute a full contract, or we could do something that's more like what we're doing with the battery facility, and we could just sign an RA only agreement. And then if the wind farm gets the deliverability from the CAISO later on this year, then we could negotiate further with Ignis, have more information about their environmental standards, and go back to the board and ask the board's permission at that time to enter into a full power purchase agreement. So let me pause there and see if there's any immediate reactions.
Are there any members who have questions or reactions to that? Director Cox, is that you? Yep. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Marie, I appreciate the presentation and all the work that's being done. I got a couple of questions. One of them is, you've got buy-in from the union, IBEW, that they're okay with this arrangement?
I have not spoken to the IBEW about this deal that is under negotiation. The IBEW, I apologize, my daughter just came home from daycare and I'm hoping she doesn't come up the stairs. The IBEW will be hired to develop the transmission line, but I have not reached out to them about this deal myself.
Okay, I would feel a little bit more comfortable if, before we have our board meeting, I know that there is kind of a little bit of a silence based on this not being a signed contract just yet in public procurement. I would like to have some input that they're okay with this arrangement before bringing it to the board, because I think that that would be some of the questions. I know you're on that tight timeline of meeting the deliverability deadline of February 14th. That's one. Secondly, also weighing in, because I do a lot of work outside of this committee with the California Department of Labor and the commission, and how that's going to be categorized and documented under this contract, because the facility is located in Mexico, and just making sure that we do have some guidance and weigh in, since it's not exactly entirely in the state of California and dealing with this. And also the worker issues and things like that, that I'm very concerned in terms of how to make sure that things are done accordingly. The contract is directly with the company. Is that company based? The plant may be based in Mexico, but is the company, if you go back one of your slides, who's the name of the entity? Wind?
Ignis is based in Spain. They have an office in San Diego.
Okay, so that's outside of their headquarters is, even though it's based in Spain, their US office is in San Diego, which is kind of outside of our jurisdiction, right? In that regards, I'm a little uncomfortable because of some unknowns that haven't been weighed in on input right now for this project. I do believe in doing international projects on another side to help our growth, to help the mission of expanding in areas that would be very advantageous in supporting wind projects, which is part of the clean energy focus for AVA. But I would feel a little bit better if there was some other things to be weighed in. And also with the workers coming in under IBEW, making sure they're prevailing wage, of course, but making sure that there's the standards of apprentice programs that are adhered to as well, to allow for various levels of classifications of trade to also have training in that regard as they implement the project as well.
Can I ask a follow-up question on the point about California Department of Labor? You said California Department of Labor and the Commission for how the project would be classified. Can you explain what classification you are inquiring about?
Well, in this regards, I assume that there'll be electrical workers under the trade classification of XYZ. How does that translate if you have workers in Mexico and you're signing the contract under using possibly Spanish law and US law and state of California law? Like, how of this kind of, you got labor laws, you got, operation, what happens in a dispute, deliverables. It's kind of like we've got a little bit of some unknowns here. Plus you got the worker segment or the business issue that is talking about the fair wages and prevailing wages, and just how is this going to wrap around in explaining this to the labor? If you have to go through, you have to get a DIR, because this is considered like a public works project, right? It's construction, and you're going to have things that I just want to make sure I understand and get more input and guidance from those authorities.
I can speak to the fact that the contract will be executed under US law. AVA would not execute any agreement under Spanish or Mexican law. We only execute deals under US law, and we always make sure that the applicable jurisdiction is Alameda County or maybe San Francisco. So if there was a dispute, the dispute would be argued within the Alameda County court system. That's just a basic requirement of every deal that we do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that helps on that aspect of it. It's just making sure that there is some due diligence on being able to carry this out in the labor side, kind of getting some of their input. But also, if there's some questions that get raised on, like, how does this manage it when you have workers from Mexico and it's done on Mexico soil? How is that going to transfer that we do things a certain way? Will that be master aligned? And I'm just trying to understand some of those pieces because I know it's a tight timeline. I get that, but I just need a little bit more assurances there on how that, is US IBEW, US side going to take responsibility of the Mexican workers? And, trying to understand these type of training, safety, all of those type of things, and getting paid the right wages. So I'm just concerned on that. The other part was when you say RA, could you break out and refresh what do you mean by what it stands for, the RA?
Yeah, RA is the abbreviation for resource adequacy. The resource adequacy program is how the state ensures that there are enough resources that are committed to participate in the energy market next month and next year, such that the state feels like, okay, we know we can operate the electric grid reliably. And just one quick primer, when we talk about different types of resources, 90 megawatt battery versus a 90 megawatt wind farm versus a 90 megawatt gas plant, they don't count for the RA program, the resource adequacy program, equally. The gas plant, 90 megawatt gas plant, that gets 90 megawatts of resource adequacy credit. The battery gets a lower amount, and the wind farm gets an even lower amount, and the solar is very, very low. So
okay, so there's different categories.
That's correct.
I see. Now for this contract, is this contract for wind projects? I'm just helping me understand. Is this approved eventually? Like you have to send it to the CPU, the Public Utilities Commission, or is it also through the California Energy Commission has to weigh in on this too?
No, because we are AVA Community Energy is not CPUC jurisdictional for cost recovery purposes. The CPUC does not approve our contracts. We would share the contract and information about the resource with the CPUC for the purposes of resource planning, and so that the CPUC knows what our portfolio looks like, but they do not approve our contracts. The CEC and the CPUC do get involved in looking at the renewable energy certificates in our portfolio for the purpose of establishing compliance with the state's renewable portfolio standard program. And so in 2028 or something like that, when this project finally gets built, if it gets built, and then years later, when the recs start coming in and we turn the recs in for compliance purposes, they would be evaluated by the Public Utilities Commission and Energy Commission. But again, because this wind farm, it directly connects to this California substation, there is no question that electrically this wind farm counts as a California wind farm. There's no question.
Okay, because it's based in California territory.
Yeah.
The substation has more, I guess, of a local established residence in California, whereas the wind farm transformer is just like an accessory type of equipment.
If you could think of it as like, all the wind farm, all the turbines deliver a little bit of energy, and it gets sort of aggregated at the wind farm transformer and stepped up so that it can travel along this transmission line quickly. The transmission lines are like highways, distribution lines are like local roads. So it's going on highway transmission lines into this substation where it would then step down, start traveling more slowly to go out and be used by customers.
I guess in a way I would say the wind farm transformer is more of a sub assembly feeding back into the substation. That's the primary, I guess, product and service type of, I guess, kind of describing it. So, okay, I'm kind of, my hat flips over on export control, and the country of origin and things like that. So just trying to help me navigate. I appreciate your time and answering all my questions.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to turn it back to our chair. And I'm just kind of learning a lot about this. So thank you.
My pleasure. There are two more bilateral projects to
Oh, I'm
show
sorry.
to you. If we have
Hold
time.
on,
Oh, no, that's
hold
okay.
on.
This was the big one.
No,
This was the big one.
hold, time out. Can I see the screen for hands first, please?
Marie, if you could,
Wait, Marie, since you're operating
I have
this,
to stop
I can't
your
see
screen.
anyone's hands, so I need to be able to,
I'll stop screen share.
thank you.
There we go.
Okay, were there any other members who had questions following Director Cox's questions before we move on? Director Gonzalez, no, yes? Yes, Director Gonzalez.
Okay, and I know we talked about this a lot already at our ad hoc meeting, but just big picture. Is it advantageous to get a PPA signed as opposed to the option agreement? And if so, why?
So from a price perspective, it would be advantageous. We are likely to get a better price if we sign the full PPA in early February, in part because of this risk component. Will it get deliverability? If it does, we have the full product of energy, the renewable energy certificates, and the resource adequacy. Now, if it does not get deliverability, that issues a different mechanism where we have the ability to walk away from the contract. So financially, it's better to do the full PPA right now. On the other hand, it might be better to wait to do the full PPA until after it gets deliverability, because then the project will be a little bit more mature. I will have had more time to work with the counterparty and understand, really get into the details of their environmental commitments, learn more about the Mexican environmental permitting process.
Okay, and then to just to be really, really painfully clear, and I think we're clear, but just to be painfully clear, we aren't building anything. We're not
Correct, we are not building it.
We're not contracting to build anything. We're contracting potentially to buy power or to have an option to enter a power purchase agreement under certain conditions.
That is correct.
Am I understanding the situation correctly?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's good enough.
Okay, we have 10 minutes before the next committee meeting begins. So Maria, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to present.
Okay. The other, oh wait, let me pull my slides back up. I'm going to waste 90 seconds trying to make my computer work. Okay, so the other two deals are from Clearway Energy. We know Clearway well. We have executed 2 contracts with them, and those 2 projects are online and delivering electricity and other products to us. Golden Field Solar and Daggett 3 Solar plus storage. And Clearway is a very mature, established company, employees all over the country, and a large office in San Francisco. Now, the projects that they are proposing to us are both batteries. I put them both on the same page. One is called Sequoia Storage. The other is Tolinas Storage. Sequoia is a 200 megawatt battery. Tolinas is 400 megawatts. Sequoia will come online in 2032, the end of 2032. Tolinas is the end of 2030. Sequoia is in Fresno County. Tolinas is in Solano County. They will pay prevailing wage. They will seek union labor. They will use union labor. They just don't have those agreements in place yet because these projects are so far out. Now, with these 2 in particular, we're not negotiating the full storage agreement, in part because it would take too long. We don't have time right now, but also because these projects are going to be, the procurement of components for them will be done in a number of years. These projects are much earlier in the development cycle. Clearway could not offer us a price that they could stand behind right now. And so with these two, we really are, by executing the RA only agreements, we really are putting an option in place for ourselves. Ava and Clearway intend to come back and negotiate with each other in a few years when Clearway has information about pricing of components. But yeah, you can think of it as an option for ourselves. And with all of these deals, it is worth noting, if these projects secure deliverability and then we are not able to agree on commercial terms and get a deal done, Ava will get some form of cash payment, and it's based on the size of the project and how much deliverability they are granted. So even if we don't do a long-term agreement in the future, we get some benefit. That's the core update on these two.
Okay. Does that conclude the presentation?
Yes.
Thank you so much. If you could take the share screen down. Now is the time for public comment. A member of the public who wishes to comment on agenda item 5 will get 2 minutes to do so. Do we have hands raised?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Public comment is closed. Is there any further discussion from members about this item? Will this presentation also be made at the board meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I will.
Member Gonzalez gets to hear it 3 times.
Yeah, I was gonna say a couple people will have the benefit of that.
But I won't be at that meeting. This meeting is next Wednesday.
That's right.
Yeah, so I won't be
You won't be
there.
there,
I'll
so
give you a few thoughts. I can give you a few thoughts.
give Howard the thoughts on this and Marie the thoughts on that. Okay, that will conclude agenda item 5. Agenda item 6 is committee member and staff announcements, including any requests to place an item on a future committee or board agenda. Are there any member or any comments from you or questions, Director Cox, for future agenda at this time?
No, not at this time. I already asked it at the board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bedoya, do you have anything at this time?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, Member Gonzalez.
I think we've already spoken about just working through a risk register. And in due course, hearing presentations about the risks and how we're managing.
I don't have any other items, so that will conclude the feedback that staff get on item 6. Item 7 is adjournment. Members, the time is 2:55. We're adjourned.